Boink. And let's get started. What I wanna try and build this session right here is I want to use test-driven development and functions to and listen to the right trigger whenever a new product is added to the product collection. It will be created in stock with a count of 5. So this on its own can be a lot of things. So what I want to do is I want to show you my setup and how I would create it. First of all, I've cheated a little bit and create a small stock right here. Now, I had a few good questions yesterday about why even add a stock when you could just in the product pretty much add stock right here. You could do that and just say right now there's 100 in here, 110. Well, that's a valid point and it's really up to you. But I feel that when I move forward, it makes a lot of sense for me to actually have stock as its own collection, because then I can start listening in that collection and I can actually only listen for stocks on my different web pages. So if I want a page that just shows an overview of all stocks for all products, it's very simple for me to hook myself into that collection. So that's why I'm going to split this into 2 different collections. Also, as we move forward, maybe my stock will start being more intelligent and maybe it'll start having when was the item last bought. Maybe it would have automatic shipping mails to specific users whenever stock was out. Maybe I could, for each stock, I could say this should be emailed to Johnny at blah, 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 when the stock was out for this specific item and stuff like that. So I feel that as my application would grow, stock would be its own unit anyway. So that's why I made stock its own model right here and its own collection. Now that means that I would also need a stock repository in my mind to work with stock. And again, the logic would be a lot simpler for me for that repository, since I would move a lot of logic into stock instead of having to have logic in here that only updated stock and stuff like that in the repository. So that's why I decided to make my own stock model right here. So let's get started. First of all, what do I want? Well, it seems that whenever I create a new product, I want to create a stock. According to this, when I create a new product, I want to create a new stock with a count of 5 in that product. And again, I just picked a number right here just for the fun of it. So you can pick any number there if you want to add 0 instead or 1. It's up to you how much you feel should be in stock from the beginning. So to get started, the first thing we need is the it, right? So we need to explain that we're going to write a new test right here. And it means this is the next test. And then you need to give it a good name. So let's say adding a new product. Let's just start with adding a new, let's just start from basic right here in the product service. Adding a new product calls product service has a create function. I'm going very low level right here. And then afterwards, you need to do a callback, right? So again, if you can go and check out my code if you forgot these. You make a function like this, just like you used to. Let me just try and show you. And again, I'll put this code on GitHub so you can use it. The reason I'm using async is because, no, let's actually keep the async out there for now. I'll just do that in the next method. So I'll add a function like this, and I'll add a couple of curly brackets, and this is where I'll execute my test right here. So my first test is going to be extremely simple. I just want to make sure that I have a create product function right here. So what I'll do is I'll say product service Whoops. And create. That's going to be my function that I want to call, right? And notice right here I failed. I have a red test. Let's actually now start running my test. I'll just show you how to do that. And again, this is available in the package.json if you want to. You can write just coverage and watch all like this, or just watch all if you want to. Or you can make, like I did, a test watch action right here. So I can write npm run test watch. Okay, so now it'll keep running the test for me forever and ever. So right now you'll see I have a failing test. It doesn't know the create function. Give me a second, I want to use the right key right here. There it is. So on the Mac, it's actually options and enter, and I guess it's control enter for Windows or something. And I want to create this method like this. So we have the method now, and now it actually passes the test, right? But the test isn't done yet. Because I want to expand it that accepts a product, expects a product as param. Now this might be overkill, but I'm going to do it like this anyway, so you can't stop me. Now we send in the product, and again we fail, right? Let's try and see if we can get help here again. So we just changed the method right here, and again notice with this auto completion, it's very easy to write your code and then get help making it work, right? We're not done yet. I actually want this to return a promise. So let's do an async call right here. Let's just say await. And notice I can't use await unless I actually use async here in front of the function. So if you guys have seen me putting in async in front of the functions, that's because I want to be able to use await. So let me just do async right here. Now I can actually start using await inside my code. Okay. So I get a fail again. And nope, I got a pass, which is perfectly fine because it just doesn't know there's a promise. But let's just say what I want to actually get back is going to be a product after of the type product is going to be equal to this await right here. So now it fails again because actually now it fails because it returns void, right? It doesn't return anything. Void doesn't mean it returns anything. So this doesn't work now either. So let me just add right here that returns containing the product. Okay, so let's go to our create function again and change that and make it into a promise right here with the product inside it. Okay, so we still fail because I don't return any method right here. I don't return a promise right now, so I have to of course fix that as well. Let's just say return promise, and then yesterday, as I showed some of you, you can say resolve like this. Whoops, resolve, and then you can just return the product. So right now I'm just returning the product that I send in because my test just says I need to return the after product, nothing else. I still fail because The only thing it's failing with right now is just that TS-lint tells me that product after is not being used for anything. Fair enough. Let's go back to the test, and right now let's just, to wrap this up, I just want to do an expect. So I expect that the product after to be the product that I just passed in, right? To passed. And I just made my first test-driven function, the create function. So I know this seems, it's completely overkill. But if you guys consider what I just did, I actually considered every step and I made a good text on why I did what I did. So I feel that even though this is a very, very simple test just to have the create, I now have a first unit test proving that I have a create function that works, right? It's again, very, very basic. I used my test-driven development setup, and it's a pretty good thing to again, when you get to the exam, especially 5th semester, it's great to talk about this because this is still something that's new in the software development environment, and people kind of get blown away when you guys understand this. Good. I can get rid of these 2 console logs now because now I'm actually using my test now, and I won't get any failures from that. Sweet. So questions? Thijs, I'll try and help you out afterwards if needed. Okay, so this was the very simple test, just showing that I can now create a product in my product service. But there's no logic yet, right? There's no logic at all. So the next step is for me to say, since I'm right now working on a very specific use case, this use case right here, I need to say when I add a new product, it should create something in stock, right? So that's the use case I'm working on right now. So I wouldn't, even though my next step would probably be to have my product repository create the product and save that in Firebase, that's not what I'm going to do right now. I'm going to focus on the collection of stock in Firebase. Let's try and go back. So let's consider the next step. I'll make a new it. I will say when product is created, a new stock with count of 5 should be added to the stock collection. Something like this. I'll do the comma. I know I'm going to do some async calls right here, so I'll do an async right away. Parentheses to create a new function, and then I'll do the fat arrow notation and a curly bracket. Now my next test is ready to run. So I already set up this guy, so I know that works. I can call it create now. I know that works because I made a test for it. But I need to now consider, how will I save my data in the stock, right? In order to save and work with data in the stock collection, I probably need a stock repository. So let's start by mocking out a stock repository. I'll do a let stock repository. I mock stock repository. It says you suck because you don't have a stock repository. Okay, let's create that. Let's actually try and see how we can do it. Create class. no, create interface right here. Maybe it can tell me where I want to put it. Let's just try and execute this. So I put it directly inside my class. I don't want it in there, but I'll just cut this out for now. And I'll go, and I know that I want to create a new area in my source, a directory called stock. Whoops, lowercase, of course. Inside that new area, I want to create a new file, which is going to be my stock repository. Repository TS. And let's just add that to Git. And then I'll just paste this in here like this, and I'll export it because I want to be able to use it elsewhere. Now notice if you guys noticed, there wasn't an export in front of this, and you don't need that if you're using it inside the same class. So if it's directly in here, you don't need to export. But since I need it in another file, I added the export here now. So that's why I'm doing that export. And now I can import it in another file. There we go. So now I have my stock repository ready to use. It doesn't do anything. It's just a dumb interface, but that's test-driven development. So what do I need? Well, I need to kind of instantiate this stock repository, and I need it inside my service. So actually, let's do another test right here. Nah, I'm going to be lazy right now. Give me a second. I just want to consider this. No, let's actually make a startup test right here, just to show you guys. Product service. Needs a stock repository. And a product repository. Again, I'll do a function right here. Now I don't need the async part right here, so I'll just keep that out. And what we'll do right here is we'll say const ps for product. No, let's say product service, new product service. And I'll do a products repository dot object, and I'll do a stock repository dot object. And notice right here I get an error because the product service doesn't need both, right? So this is just going to be a test that I put in the right information in my service. And let's just actually extend this so it uses these. No. There we go. Try and go in there and have a look. I'll just make it private. So now I have the stock repository available in here. Okay. But notice again, it's my test that drives these changes. Also notice out of the box automatically, it actually added inside the product service right here, it actually added that for me. That's freaking magic. And then what I want to do in this test is pretty much just make sure that I expect that the product service to be defined. I know this looks completely stupid. What do you complain about? Oh yeah, that's because I'm using the same name. So this is just to kind of handle the TS-lint issue. I'm just saying that I expect the product service survives right here. Still failed actually. Oh yeah, now it fails because this guy is declared but never used. And again, TS-lint really, I know sometimes you get annoyed by TS-lint, but it's really trying to help you do good code. That's all it's trying to do. So for now, just to get running, what I'll do is again, just console log this, I will end up using it soon in the product. So I'll just console log it for now to continue working right here. Stock repository. There we go. Okay, let's see what else we have. You guys see the problem? Every time you get issues like this, as you get better and better, it'll be a lot easier for you to kind of read these issues. And notice right here, my problem is that stock repository is not defined in my test yet. So let me just go back to my test. Notice I didn't actually instantiate the stock repository. I only instantiated the product repository with the mark right here. So what I need to do is I kind of need to instantiate this guy. Let's try again. For pass test. And notice how slowly I get more and more tests into my system. And yes, I know you might feel that things are moving extremely slow, but if I didn't have to explain all the time, this would actually be pretty fast. And the better you get at this, you'll just be sprinting. But the cool thing is, every time you write a single line of code, you considered it. You considered if that was part of your case, right? So going back. Good. I'll do one more test and then we'll have a break. Because the test I wanted down here was, when product is created, a new stock with a count of find should be added to the stock. Okay. So what do I want to do? Well, first of all, I expect that my stock repository has a way for me to create new stock, right? So what we actually should do was we should go in and create a test for that, either in testing the stock repository on its own, we could do that, or I can just start developing the methods I need in the repository directly inside the service. I'll just do that. I'll just start evolving the stock repository directly inside the service area right here. So what do I expect? Well, I expect that my stock repository, so here I'm going to start actually mocking my stock repository to get the methods that I need. So let's start out by just saying, I expect that the stock repository, I expect it's set up, and then you can write stock repo or something like that. You can also write stock repository, no, stock repo. And then here we're using a lambda expression, right? I expect that this guy has a method called create with amount. Again, the name is up to you. We could also just call it create. Let's just call it create, just to make it easier to understand. So I expect that the stock repository has a create function inside it, right? And I expect that that stock repository is going to need two variables. I'm just going to go ahead and make it in one single call right here, where before I showed you where we did in steps. I expect that this guy has two methods in here. First of all, it's going to get a product, which is the product I want to create stocks for. And then it's going to get a count, which is how many do I want to add. And in this case, I want to add 5, right? So that's the thing I expect the create function will actually have for me. Now it says I don't have a create function, so I can't do that for you. Let's not create it yet. Let's just do one more step, because I expect that it returns a promise that resolves. So what do I return? Well, let's just for now return the product itself, right? That I just created a stock for. It could also, let's actually return the stock just to make this a bit more interesting. So it's going to return a stock. Now I need a stock to do this, to return. So let's just locally create a new stock. I'll type it to stock. I'll import the stock, and I'll create a new stock right here, which will be the stock, the product that was just created, and the count will be 5. Right? So that's pretty much what I expect will be returned when I'm done. Okay? Guess what? I fail. Why? Because the create function doesn't exist in the stock repo. Let's just create that one. So I have the stock repo. I just created my new function. Whoops. I'll save this. Right now it returns any. That's actually not what I wanted to return, because again, I can read in my code, it should actually return a promise with a stock, right? So again, by reading my code, it's very simple to kind of say this should be a promise with a stock inside it. And let's import that stock. I just built my interface method right here, again, test driven. Just considering again, step by step, what do I need to get this done? And notice again, I don't know how Firebase will handle this. It's up to Firebase. If I use the REST API instead as the repository, or I used SQL database directly as a repository, I don't know how the stock repository will save this, and I don't care. My service doesn't care. The final thing I want to do is I want to make sure that when I call my create function, when I call this create function in the service, I want to make sure that that create function at some point calls the create method in the stock repo. Okay, I want to make sure it does that. So what I want to do as the final thing, since I set this method up right here, and I kind of prepared the system for using this method, I want to make sure that when I call the create function, it also calls this method right here. So let's do that. I'll do a verify by calling stock repository dot verify. Now this is using mockts to verify. So again, I'll get some kind of stock repo using the lambda expression, and I'll say stock repo dot create. I expect that's what being called with the product and with the count of 5. Oops. Right? That's what I expect is going to be called. And then you do a comma to explain to the system how many times do you think it'll be called. And in my case, it's going to be called exactly 1 time. Let's just import the times. Save this. We get a failure. Let's just have a look right here what failed. Create with an object and 5 should be called exactly 1 times, but was called exactly 0 times. How do we fix this? Go into our service, and we need to call this. So we'll say this dot stock repository create with the product and the number 5. Save this. So what I want to show you guys is Now we start getting that stock repository create is not a function. On line 25, so let's just have a look, because I did something completely wrong. Nope. I'll show you why this pops up. Because the problem is actually, again, that when I now call my create right here, this, notice it's this function that fails. Notice again, if you read the lines, it's, you guys just need to start learning how to read these issues right here. And when I read the line, it says in the test function, test class, sorry, on line 25, there's a problem. And I scroll down, it's right here. The problem is that this create right here tries to call the create function on the repository, but that doesn't exist because I'm in the mock framework right here. It tries to create this function, but I defined it down here. Notice I defined that function down here, okay? I didn't define it globally before each call. So what I'll do now is I'll move this yoinks from here to here. Like this. So now every method in my entire test set right here, or every test, will know that there's going to be a create method available in my mock. I also need the stock, so let's move that. Like this. Now we have the stock available as well. Let's see what happens. Because now this test also knows, oh sorry, when I call the create, this test also knows that the stock repository is going to contain a method called create, and that's going to return a promise. Okay, so that should help. We still have one failing. Let's have a look. It still says that stock repo create is not called at all. Any guesses why? Because I haven't called it. So of course I still need to call my await right here and create my product, right? Or else I haven't called the method. Okay, let's just save that. See what happens. Now I have all passing again. Okay, I wanted to show you guys, we now kind of made something that can prove that my stock repository actually has a create function. But let's just wrap this up today, because I could keep testing now. And I am going to do that to kind of show you guys each scenario. But in order to just show you guys some of the other questions you asked me, like how do I use the create function from Firebase functions and stuff like that, I'm going to try and just move things along and create my new stock repository Firebase part and create a controller that can actually start creating new products and then execute that and try to deploy it all to Firebase as the final part right here today. So we have this service available right now that can create the stocks, but it doesn't actually create the product itself. It just creates the stocks. So let's start there. When I create a product, I want to actually also use my product repository to create a product, right? So the actual product should be created. Now, let's have a look at the product repository. It doesn't contain a product create function right here. So again, the right way to do it is, of course, to use test-driven development. Let's actually do it, because again, I'm going to need it anyway. So I'll just add another test right here. Product service should call create function. on product repository. So again, I can verify this, and I'm going to use the product repository. To verify. From now, I'm actually going to call these guys just repo or repository, because then I can reuse and copy paste some code now and then, which you should never do. I want to have a create function that's going to be called once with the product. I don't need to save my local reference right here for that guy, so I'll just get rid of it. So I don't have a create function. I'll have to make that function, create the method. I have a create function now. It's going to return a promise. Now notice now I'm actually going to do this real time, like if I was coding myself. I'm just going to talk out loud for everything I'm doing. I'm going to just speed things up a little bit. I notice I'm start getting to some failures because the create function isn't available for my product repository. So I'll have to mock that for now. So let's just say again, repo right here. And repo right here. It needs a create function that contains the product. And that should return the product that I just created, like this. When it's done, now my test passes here again. Everything passes. And that's because if I go to my service, you'll notice there's an error right here. But now I actually called the create, so now everything passes. Sweet. Now, there's a problem still, right? Because my logic might be running, but I haven't created any of this in my implementation classes. Okay, so you have to remember, my product repository now contains this new method, but if I go to my Firebase repository, you'll notice it hasn't implemented the method, so I'll get an implementation error now if I try to build this. Just to kind of show this to you, let's say that I thought I was done now, so I'll do a build, npm run build, and I'll start getting hopefully a lot of different errors. 3 different errors right here. Let's just have a look at the errors. Create is missing inside the product Firebase repository. Let's try and jump into the product Firebase repository. And again, you'll notice that, of course, I don't have a create function here. That makes sense, right? So I'll have to implement that function. And to be honest, I'm just going to call this method right here. Notice I need a new path for products like this. By the way, just so you know, I could unit test this as well. But in order to unit test this, I would have to mock out Firebase. And there's a lot of work there to mock out Firebase. I can show you if you want to, but in my mind, you don't have to do unit testing for your repositories. You don't have to. You can do it, but I think it's just better that you mock them out in your service and then just say, I expect that Firebase does what it should. Okay, so you don't have to make testing of your implementation of your repositories or your implementation of your controllers. You don't have to test those, okay? You can do it, but you don't have to. So let's just say, how do we create a new one? I should be able to say this.db to get access to my Firebase, and then document to show what document I'm looking for. And let's just put this in here. Like this. And then I should be able to say create and just pass in the product that I want to create, right? What am I getting back? I'm getting back a write result, and a write result is actually not a product. Okay, so here again, this promise right here is returning something called write result. What the hell is a write result? And it's something that Firebase defined for me. So let's actually say, instead of returning this as a promise, let's try and do an await right here by actually adding an async keyword. Notice you can easily await your calls here as well, just by adding the async keyword in front of your methods. Now that means I can actually get the write result back like this. And then now, because I have that async right there, I can actually put in the await right here. So now I have some kind of write result here. What the hell is a write result? And when it's actually completed, I'm going to return, I'm going to return promise dot resolve. And then I'm going to put in the product right here that I completed. Okay. Now, there's a few things I didn't cover right here that we'll talk about next week. For instance, what if something goes wrong? What if an exception happens right here in the promise? How would I handle that? I'll show you that Wednesday. Okay, I'll talk about how you can handle rejecting a promise. So we'll talk about exception handling later on. And again, the next step could then be to go to and do the deploy again. So let's try and do the deploy now. Again, notice this is now the actual implementation of my different areas, like this. So I found another error right here. It says stock repository.repo. Can I find stock repository inside my dependency factory? So let's try and go to the dependency factory. And the problem right here is that when I did the refactor, if you guys remember, it actually automatically tried to create this stock repository for me. And that's not good. So I will just do a repo stock right here. And I'll just rename this to repo product like this. And of course, now I can just start using this instead. And I'll make this into a stock repository. Let's just try and, did I put in the wrong name? I probably did something bad here. Maybe it's because that's not the one I'm using right now. That's, of course, I need to create this one. Yes. Let's just create that one. New file stock.repository. And again, I know this might seem like my unit test isn't driving me anymore, but it actually is, because everything I'm writing right here is something that I know I need because of my unit tests, right? So I'm getting so much help right here from my unit tests. I'm going to put in this class right here. I'm going to make a new stock repository like this. Going to use the stock repository like this. There we go. And then let's just get rid of pretty much everything except this one. I want to keep the stock path. Let's just get rid of all of this. And you can actually notice that I can reuse this guy. Let's just keep that one. There we go. And I can actually also reuse this guy because it just needs to be stock instead. And of course, I need this to be stock. And then I need to also have a count. Actually, that will be inside the stock. Let's just say I just noticed a bug right here. This was actually something unit test would catch. So turn the stock. Going to be a stock. Let's get rid of the product. Complaints. Let's have a look at our repository. That's because I'm actually passing in a product and a number. So I of course have to do that instead, like this. So I'll just generate a stock from that. Of the type stock. And it'll have a product. which will be the products, and account, which will be the number. And then we'll pass that to our stock. That means that now in my dependency factory, I can now start creating a stock repository. I have my repo for the product and my repo for the stock. I think what's very important to notice right here is I didn't deploy anything yet. I'm only doing logic right here to figure out if things are working. So now we have a product controller. We're not done yet because of course we also need the controller to start actually writing products, right? So I need that new function here as well. So let's just create a new one. Because now we are in the front end part. So I'll say create right here. It won't get a snapshot like this. So let's figure out what we're getting. This was one of the questions I got. When I call instead on write like this, what am I getting back if I do a single on create? Let's try and do, give me a second right here. Whoops. I'll make a new export. I'll just call it new product. I know these kind of overlap each other, but it doesn't matter. I want to say on create instead of on write, like this. Now notice it fails with this snap right here because it's actually not a change. It's actually a document snapshot I'm getting back right here with document data. So I want to go to my controller. I want to go to the create function, and then I want to change this. So I'll change the signature. Yes, please. I'll go to the create function, and now notice I'm getting back a document snapshot. Now this you shouldn't be concerned about what a document snapshot is, but this guy has two document snapshots, a before and an after, and this guy only has the document snapshot, the single created item, right? So we can say .data directly on this snap. This is all something that I know from the documentation, or I know by going into again to the code and having a look right here. And notice right here it has the data function right here to get the data back for the thing you're building. Let's try and go back to the controller now. It now needs that create function. Let's implement it. Put it down here like this. And now, of course, we need to, again, create our products. But since we only have, let's just get rid of this Firestore right here. It should be able to recognize this. Get rid of this guy. Can't? Why don't you want to import those? Okay, maybe it's a different type of snapshot. I don't think it is, but it doesn't matter. It's pretty much just pre-naming the class right here. To kind of,
you just need the document snapshot, I think.
Yeah, you don't need this, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, but still, why does it complain about, why does it need the pre-naming right here? The namespace shouldn't be necessary. Well, it's not. Okay, so now the snap right here should have the data function available like this, and I can say product like this. So this is the product that I'm going to build, right? And then I should be able to use my product service to create. And then pass in the product like this. And that returns a promise. Why are you complaining? Evil machine. Oh, this is a void right here. It should, of course, be the product that I'm done with. There we go. And then, of course, it complains that I put in by mistake void here as well. Shouldn't be void. Should be product or any. Like this. And now we're pretty much set up. So to the one who asked about the difference between onCreate and onWrite, you'll notice that the onWrite contains a change that contains the document, where the onCreate contains the document, so it only has one document, not two. That's kind of the difference between these two. So next step should pretty much be, if I haven't forgotten anything, to do a build again, and let's see if we can now run. So it did the build. So now we can try and deploy. npm run deploy. we get an error again. And I want to show you guys this because I feel it's important that you guys can start reading these error messages. And the problem is I have two promises right here that aren't being handled properly. Now, what does that mean? If I go to my service, you'll notice that there's actually two promises in here in the create function, this one and this one that has the squiggly line right below them. And it pretty much just means I need to, again, I should handle these and say, what if I get an error? What if I don't get an error? How will I handle these two different areas? So again, I'll just do it simple right now. I'll add an async and I'll say, wait for this to complete and wait for this to complete. I'm not going to use it for anything right now, but I could use it for creating more information. I could use it for error handling, and we will do that later with testing. We'll talk about that next time, Wednesday. We'll talk about this. Let's just try and do the deploy again. Seems we're getting somewhere. I had some of you had issues deploying to Firebase where you had some kind of authentication issue. If you see that authentication issue, try and do a Firebase logout, Firebase login, and then try again. Because I've seen sometimes where it forgets my token and I can't log in until I kind of log out and log in again. I shouldn't create it myself. It's already created, right?